want to take a moment now to introduce to you a very distinguished leader of the United States Senate who served in the Senate for 18 years, Senator Larry Pressler. Senator Pressler is an Oxford Rhodes Scholar. He is a graduate of Harvard Law School, served in the U.S. House of Representatives, then in the U.S. Senate, chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, and on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for 18 years. Senator Pressler has joined us in traveling to Bucharest, has spoken at our Washington Forum several times, and of course now joins us here in Panama. Thank you, sir, for your distinguished service to our country and to the world. We appreciate your being with us today. Senator Larry Pressler.
Well, good morning, all. I hope I found the right place at the right time in history. I've got with me today, part of my speech is going to be based on Homer's Odyssey. Don't let me scare you, but Odyssey believed in travel and communications, and he traveled the world communicating with people, and that's what many of you do, and that's what we're doing here today. But our subject is very serious here in the sense of what our mutual security is, and what our future will be. As my friend Congressman Pittenger mentioned, I had the privilege of serving on the Foreign Relations Committee during the early Ronald Reagan years and through the Carter and Ford years up to almost present day. And we used to have a lot of controversy about Central America, about the Contras in Nicaragua, and I was a supporter of President Reagan's program on that, although also on the committee at the same time was Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, who he and a few of the fellows on the Democratic side took the opposite point of view. So we used to have some very heated debates, but I'm very proud to see how well this country is doing, how much better Central and South America seems to be in terms of political stability than it was back in those days. So I congratulate you on that. Let me I just made a few notes here to why are we meeting? And I think that maybe the old book of the Odyssey by Homer tells he went around the world sharing ideas, trying to get ideas from others and listening. And I look upon these conferences as much as listening as speaking, certainly. And I look forward to hearing many of my fellow speakers here today. But we have a great opportunity, a continuing opportunity. I think the relationship between the United States and Central and South America is as good as it's ever been. And that certainly includes this country, although we have constant work to do to keep the relationship sound. And I know that our American ambassador has spoken about this, and many of you have been involved. But we are one country in the sense of communications. When I was in the Senate, my principal piece of legislation was the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which this country and many others adopted a parallel act in the late 1990s. And we are able to call each other up on the phone or communicate as never before, and at a very low cost. Remember how expensive those long distance calls were back in the old days? So, of course, everybody here is so young you don't remember that, I suppose. But we have a much better chance of communicating with each other and staying in touch. Also, I want to congratulate you on your continued success as a democracy. We are struggling with another presidential election in the United States. I always say we sort of renew ourselves through presidential elections. They're not very pretty to look at, and they're complicated, but it gets our country together every 4 years at least, and we accept the results, and we've been very successful in having a democracy. And I hope, and that's true of all the countries here in this hemisphere, as far as I can ascertain to some extent. But the challenges we face are those of lethargy and letting things slide. We on the American side have got to work harder at understanding our neighbors. We have to work harder at doing business with our neighbors, and we have to be alert to little fractures in the relationships that come up so that we deal with them as quickly as we can. And I think on both sides, we're at a pretty good stage now at this point. In fact, when I first started doing Central America, we had the Nicaraguan Contras, and I recall being on the Foreign Relations Committee and debating with Senator Joe Biden of Delaware, who was on the other side of that issue. And I supported President Reagan at that time, although compromises were reached between what Reagan wanted and what existed here. So I think we've come out pretty well. Now in Washington, D.C., we face another presidential election, which brings our country together. I think our presidential elections, although they're always controversial, I think that they bring our country together, and I expect that this one will do the same. We have President Biden, who will probably run for re-election. He's exactly my age. I don't know if I can do it, but I think he will be able to. And then on the Republican side, we have at least 2 or 3 candidates announced. But that will all work out, and that will all come to the fore in the next year or two. And we do settle our disputes in elections, especially elections to the Senate and the House and for the presidency, and they're all up for grabs this next go-around. A third of our Senate gets elected every 6 years, and we will have, so it's a very important election, and it's about equal between Democrats and Republicans. And there really aren't a dividing issue. A lot of times in our history, for example, I've just been reading some about Abraham Lincoln in his time. In those days, they had the beginning of the Republican Party, which was anti-slavery, and those clear-cut, deep issues. We don't have such clear-cut, deep issues. We have some issues. Our Republican Party, generally speaking, although everybody in the Republican Party, and I'm a part of it, is sort of independent-minded, but we have to be sure that that in this election we let all voices be heard, and that we are prepared to accept the results, which I am, and I have not liked some of the refusal to accept the results of elections unless there's some real evidence. And I have never seen a clear example of a stolen vote in the United States. I never have. Maybe there are false things said in campaigns. Maybe there are, but we have been very fortunate. I'm not one of those who believes that elections have been stolen in the United States, or that I accept that Joe Biden is the president of the United States, even though I'm a Republican. I think we have to go forward on that. I think democracies are getting into a little bit of trouble these last few years if we listen closely to those who say elections are stolen here. I don't think they are in the United States. Now, maybe it's happened in lots of other countries, but that's just my personal opinion. But I think we have to keep working on the quality of the ballot, and we have to keep working on being sure that every vote is counted and accounted for. But we don't want to, sometimes losers in elections, they immediately say, well, it was fraud or something like that. They didn't say that before the election usually, or they could have dropped out or something, but we don't want to get into a situation where losers of election can call fraud and then not accept the results of the election. So I've placed my friends or my fellow Republicans and Democrats, we're going to run hard in these elections, but we have to accept the results and not just the loser go out and say, well, there was fraud, and we're starting to do that in the United States, but I think now that's kind of come to an end. I see in the governor's race in Arizona and elsewhere, some of the losers have accepted the results much better. But that's one thing that I worry about in democracy, and one thing I would ask you to, we've got to preserve the quality of the vote, or we've got to accept the results. If we're on the losing side, well, if we're on the winning side, wonderful, we get the offices. But if we're on the losing side, we have to continue in what they call in England, the loyal opposition. I'm giving some speeches at Oxford University at this summer, or the spring in May and June, about there's a responsibility of citizens to participate, to vote, to enjoy victory, but also if they are defeated, to accept the defeat and to accept the winner as the legitimate governor or the legitimate president or whatever. We have to remember that, because if people participate in an election and the day that they lose, they immediately say, well, that was a fraud, I'm not accepting that. Well, they should have said that was a fraud before and dropped out or something. But, and we do have to be careful about fraudulence, but there's not as much fraudulence in elections as is alleged. And I'm kind of a believer in democracy, and I think we do a pretty good job of counting the votes in most states in the United States. I'm not saying there hasn't ever been anything wrong. So my message to you here today is to continue coming to this meeting, because by coming, you're voting with your feet by coming here and showing vigilance in terms of national security issues and other challenges that we face as a society. In the United States, we continue to plow along, and we do pretty well. There's somewhere it says our democracy, there's ups and downs and constant strife, but through that strife comes out the truth and a result. And we have to be prepared to accept the results if we should lose an election, and certainly if we get to take responsibility if we win an election. So all of you are a part of that effort by coming here and by being a part of national security issues that are so important. Now, over the years, the United States has had differing relationships with the countries of Central and South America, but I think today they're just about as good as they've ever been, and we have to work hard to continue that, and that's part of what we're doing here, talking and so forth. I've been carrying around a book called The Odyssey by Homer, which is kind of a highbrow book, I suppose, but he traveled the world. Odysseus traveled the world communicating with people, and it was kind of not clear what his purpose was other than to spread the good word or to be kind to people and so forth, although he got into a few scrapes as he went around the world. But the point is we have to communicate, and that's what we're trying to do here. And nowadays it's much easier. When we had the Telecommunications Act of 1996 in the Senate, and that same act was copied by close to 100 countries. So you can pick up the phone now and call somebody on a cell phone almost anywhere in the world in a few minutes. And that wasn't always true, but government was blocking that. Governments were blocking that because they were collecting all kinds of fees and taxes. But now we're past that. But now we have to take advantage of that communication opportunity to really talk to each other and to really understand each other. And I know that it's thought that the United States is European-centered, but I think we're paying more and more attention to Central and South America, I hope. We have in the world, I suppose Russia would be our foe, although I hope we can keep talking to the Russians. I believe it's better to talk to people than fight with them. And I'm hoping very much that President Putin of the Soviet Union and our President, Joe Biden, will keep that in mind as they instruct their ministers. So with that, I'm very glad to be here. I thank each and every one of you for coming, because by being here, you are contributing to this ongoing democracy, and you are also contributing to the understanding of human beings. Thank you very much.